There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you realize the life you're living is not the life you were meant to live, not because it's painful, not because it's broken, but because it's average, it's tolerable, it's acceptable, it's safe, and that is precisely why it is dangerous. Because average does not announce itself as failure. It disguises itself as comfort. It whispers, "This is enough." It convinces you to settle, not in one dramatic decision, but in 1,000 small ones. Decisions to delay, to doubt, to dim your fire just enough to fit into a world that has forgotten what burning feels like. And so you wake up each day with a quiet tension in your chest. Not anxiety exactly, not sadness exactly, but something deeper, a knowing, a pressure, a voice you've tried to silence, but it keeps returning. It says, you were built for more, not more noise, not more distractions, not more approval, more impact, more truth, more power, more life. But to claim it, you must first confront something most people never dare to face. You must refuse average, not casually, not temporarily, but completely. Because average is not just a result, it is a mindset. It is a way of thinking that seeps into your identity, shaping your actions until you no longer question the limits you've accepted. It teaches you to negotiate with your potential, to bargain with your greatness, to shrink your vision so it feels manageable. But greatness does not respond to negotiation. Greatness demands decision. It demands that you look at your current life, every habit, every routine, every belief, and ask a brutally honest question. Is this the life of someone who refuses average? And if the answer is no, then something must change. Not someday, not when it's convenient, now. Because the truth is, your life is not waiting for you. It is responding to you. Every thought you think is a command. Every belief you hold is a blueprint. Every action you take is a vote for the person you are becoming. And right now, whether you realize it or not, you are casting votes. Votes for comfort or growth. Votes for fear or courage. Votes for average or greatness. You cannot cast both. There is no middle ground. The moment you decide to refuse average, everything changes, not because the world suddenly becomes easier, but because you become different. Your standards rise, your awareness sharpens, your tolerance for excuses disappears. You begin to see clearly. You see how often you've waited for motivation instead of creating discipline. You see how often you've doubted yourself instead of developing belief. You see how often you've followed the crowd instead of trusting your own vision. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. This is where transformation begins, not in action, but in awareness. Because before you can build a life of greatness, you must dismantle the illusion of average. And that illusion is built on one powerful lie, that you are limited, limited by your past, limited by your circumstances, limited by what others think, limited by what you've been told is realistic. But realism has never created greatness. Every extraordinary life began with a refusal to accept what was considered possible, a refusal to shrink, a refusal to conform, a refusal to settle. And that refusal begins in the mind. Because your mind is not just a processor of reality, it is a creator of it. What you believe, you build. If you believe you are average, your actions will reflect it. You will hesitate where you should act. You will retreat where you should push forward. You will accept opportunities that are beneath you and reject ones that require you to rise. But if you believe, truly believe, that you are capable of greatness, something shifts. You begin to move differently. You take ownership. You take risks. You take responsibility for everything, your wins, your losses, your future. And this is where most people stop, because belief is powerful, but it is also uncomfortable. To believe in your greatness means you can no longer hide behind excuses. You can no longer say, I don't have time. You can no longer say, I'm not ready. You can no longer say, maybe someday, because belief demands action. It demands that you align your life with your vision. And vision is where greatness is born. Not vague dreams, not wishful thinking, but a clear, compelling image of the life you are building. A vision that pulls you forward when motivation fades. A vision that gives meaning to your struggle. A vision so vivid, so alive, that it becomes impossible to ignore. Because without vision, you drift, and drifting leads to average. But with vision, you move with purpose. You begin to ask different questions. Not what's easy, but what's necessary. Not what's comfortable, but what's aligned. Not what do others expect, but what do I demand of myself? And as your questions change, so do your standards. You stop tolerating mediocrity in your habits. You stop accepting less than your best effort. You stop compromising your future for temporary comfort, because you understand something most people never fully grasp. Your life is a direct reflection of your standards, not your intentions, not your desires, your standards. What you tolerate, you become. And if you tolerate average thinking, average effort, average discipline, you will live an average life. But the moment you raise your standards, everything begins to shift. Not instantly, not effortlessly, but inevitably, because higher standards demand higher actions. And higher actions create higher results. This is where discipline enters the equation, not as punishment, not as restriction, but as power. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. It is what carries you forward when motivation disappears. Because motivation is emotional, it rises and falls. But discipline is structural, it remains. It is built through repetition, through commitment, through the willingness to act even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it, because that is the moment that defines you. Anyone can act when they are inspired. Anyone can push when it feels good. But greatness is built in the moments when it doesn't, when it's early, when it's hard, when no one is watching. Those are the moments that separate average from extraordinary. Because average waits, extraordinary moves. Average negotiates, extraordinary commits. Average hopes, extraordinary executes. And execution is where everything becomes real. Ideas are meaningless without action. Dreams are empty without effort. Vision is powerless without movement. You must act, not perfectly, not flawlessly, but consistently. You must show up again and again, even when progress feels slow, because progress is not always visible. Sometimes it is happening beneath the surface, building strength, building resilience, building the version of you that can handle the life you are creating. And that life will test you. It will challenge your patience. It will stretch your limits. It will force you to confront every doubt, every fear, every weakness you've tried to avoid. This is not a sign you are failing. It is a sign you are growing, because growth requires resistance. Without it, you remain the same, and remaining the same is the definition of average. So when the challenges come, and they will, you must not retreat. You must adapt. Because adaptability is not weakness, it is intelligence. It is the ability to adjust your approach without abandoning your goal, to learn from failure without identifying with it, to remain flexible in method but unshakable in vision. This is how you sustain momentum. This is how you continue forward when others quit. Because most people are not stopped by failure. They are stopped by their interpretation of failure. They see it as proof they are not capable. But you must see it differently. You must see failure as feedback, as information, as instruction, as a necessary part of the process, because every setback contains a lesson, and every lesson brings you closer to mastery. But only if you are willing to learn, only if you are willing to remain a student of your own life. Because greatness is not a destination, it is a continuous evolution. It requires curiosity. It requires humility. It requires the willingness to admit that you do not yet know everything, but you are committed to learning whatever is required. And this mindset, this relentless pursuit of growth, is what separates those who plateau from those who rise. Because average seeks comfort. Greatness seeks expansion, and expansion requires courage. The courage to step into uncertainty, the courage to take risks without guarantees, the courage to bet on yourself again and again, even when the odds are unclear. This is not easy. It is not supposed to be, because if it were easy, everyone would do it. But they don't. They settle, they wait, they convince themselves that good enough is enough. But you are not here to be good enough. You are here to be undeniable, to build something so strong, so aligned, so powerful that it cannot be ignored. And that requires resilience, the ability to keep going when progress is slow, to stay focused when distractions are everywhere, to remain committed when results are delayed. Because the truth is, greatness often takes longer than expected. It demands patience, not passive waiting, but active persistence. Showing up day after day, doing the work, refining your craft, sharpening your mind, strengthening your habits, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Because something is always changing. You are. And that is what matters most. Because the person you become in the process is the real reward. Stronger, sharper, more focused, more disciplined, more aware. A version of you that no longer fits into the old patterns, the old limits, the old identity. And as you evolve, something else begins to shift. Your perspective, you begin to see challenges as opportunities. You begin to see effort as privilege. You begin to feel gratitude not just for the outcomes, but for the journey itself. Because gratitude grounds you. It keeps you present. It keeps you focused. It reminds you that even as you strive for more, you already have something valuable, something worth building on. And this balance between ambition and gratitude is what sustains long-term greatness. Because without gratitude, ambition becomes emptiness. And without ambition, gratitude becomes stagnation. You need both. You need the hunger to grow and the awareness to appreciate. Because this journey is not just about achieving, it is about becoming. And becoming requires one final, unwavering commitment. You must decide, once and for all, that average is no longer an option. Not in your thinking, not in your habits, not in your execution. You must raise your standards so high that your old life no longer feels acceptable. So high that excuses lose their power. So high that discipline becomes your default. So high that greatness is not something you chase, it is something you embody. Because in the end, greatness is not reserved for a select few. It is available to anyone willing to do what most will not, to think differently, to act consistently, to persist relentlessly, to refuse average, completely, unapologetically, and without compromise. And when you do, when you truly commit, you will realize something that changes everything. Your greatness was never out of reach. It was waiting for you to decide. And the moment you decide, truly decide, something within you awakens that cannot be put back to sleep. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, but it is undeniable. A shift, a line drawn in the unseen space between who you have been and who you refuse to remain. Because from this moment forward, you no longer negotiate with weakness. You no longer entertain the voice that says, maybe later. You no longer entertain the comfort of delay disguised as preparation. You understand now, clarity strikes like lightning, that delay is the silent architect of regret. And regret is the heaviest weight a human being can carry. Not failure, not rejection, not even loss, but the haunting awareness of potential left unused, the echo of a life that could have been. You feel it in people who settle. You see it in their eyes when they talk about what they almost did, what they could have been, what they wish they tried. That will not be your story, because you have seen the truth. There is a cost to chasing greatness, But there is a far greater cost to avoiding it, and that cost is paid daily in boredom, in frustration, in quiet dissatisfaction that no amount of distraction can silence. So you choose differently. You choose the path that demands more because it gives more. You choose the path that stretches you because it strengthens you. You choose the path that most people avoid because you now understand that what is rare is rarely easy, and what is easy is rarely meaningful. And this choice begins to reshape your identity, because identity is not fixed, it is formed. Formed through repetition, through action, through the stories you tell yourself about who you are. And for too long, you may have carried a story that kept you small. A story that said, you're not ready, you're not capable, you're not the kind of person who achieves that level. But now, that story begins to dissolve, because you realize something powerful. You are not your past decisions. You are your current ones. And every moment offers you a new opportunity to cast a different vote. A vote for discipline when you feel like quitting. A vote for courage when fear rises. A vote for growth when comfort calls your name. This is how identity changes. Not through declarations, but through demonstration, through proof, through showing yourself again and again that you are capable of more than you believe. And as that proof accumulates, something extraordinary happens. Confidence emerges, not the loud performative kind, not arrogance, but quiet, grounded certainty. The kind that does not need validation. The kind that does not waver in the presence of doubt, because it has been built, not imagined. Built through early mornings when you chose purpose over sleep. Built through long hours when you chose focus over distraction. Built through setbacks when you chose persistence over surrender. This is real confidence. And once you have it, you move differently. You speak with intention. You act with precision. You carry yourself with a presence that others can feel even if they cannot explain. Because you are no longer trying to become someone. You are becoming them. And yet, the journey does not become easier. In fact, in many ways, it becomes more demanding. Because as you rise, expectations rise with you, not from others, but from yourself. You begin to see gaps you once ignored. You begin to recognize areas where you can improve, refine, elevate. And this is where many fall into a dangerous trap. The trap of perfection. The belief that everything must be flawless before it is worthy. But perfection is not the goal. Progress is, because perfection paralyzes. Progress propels. Perfection waits for ideal conditions. Progress creates momentum in imperfect ones. And momentum is everything. Because once you have it, you become unstoppable. Not because obstacles disappear, but because you have trained yourself to move through them, to keep going, to keep building, to keep showing up. And this consistency compounds day by day, action by action, choice by choice, until one day you look back and the distance between who you were and who you are is undeniable. But you do not stop, because greatness is not a finish line. It is a standard, a way of living, a way of thinking, a way of approaching every aspect of your life. You bring it into your work. No longer satisfied with doing what is required, you do what is exceptional. You bring it into your relationships. No longer passive or distracted, you become present, intentional, and deeply engaged. You bring it into your health. No longer neglecting your body, you treat it as the foundation of your energy, your clarity, your power. Because you understand that greatness is holistic. It is not one area of excellence surrounded by neglect. It is alignment. Mind, body, action, purpose, all moving in the same direction. And this alignment creates something rare, clarity. A sense of knowing exactly who you are, what you stand for, and where you are going. And when you have clarity, distractions lose their power. You are no longer pulled in every direction. You are no longer swayed by every opinion, because you have a vision, and that vision anchors you. It becomes your filter. Opportunities are no longer judged by how exciting they are, but by how aligned they are. People are no longer evaluated by how familiar they feel, but by how they influence your growth. You become selective, intentional, focused. And focus is a superpower in a world addicted to distraction. Because while others scatter their energy across endless noise, you concentrate yours on what truly matters. And concentrated effort creates extraordinary results, not instantly, but inevitably. Because when effort is focused, it is magnified. And when it is sustained, it becomes unstoppable. But sustaining it requires something deeper than motivation. It requires purpose, a reason strong enough to carry you through difficulty, a meaning powerful enough to outlast temporary discomfort. Because when your actions are connected to purpose, they gain weight, they gain significance. They become more than tasks, they become expressions of who you are becoming. And this is what fuels long-term greatness, not external rewards, not recognition, but internal alignment. The feeling that you are living in accordance with your highest potential. And yet, even with purpose, even with clarity, even with discipline, there will be moments when you feel tired, moments when the path feels long, moments when doubt tries to creep back in. This is where resilience is tested, not in grand, dramatic challenges, but in quiet, persistent resistance. The kind that whispers, take a break, slow down, you've done enough. And sometimes rest is necessary. But there is a difference between rest and retreat. Rest restores, retreat abandons, and you must learn to recognize the difference, because greatness requires recovery, but it does not tolerate complacency. So you learn to listen to your body, to your mind, to your energy. You learn when to push and when to pause. And this awareness becomes another form of strength, because you are no longer operating blindly. You are operating intelligently, strategically, with intention. And this is where you begin to separate even further from average. Because average reacts, greatness responds. Average is driven by impulse. Greatness is guided by awareness. Average seeks immediate comfort. Greatness invests in long-term fulfillment. And as this pattern continues, your life begins to take shape in a new way, not by accident, not by chance, but by design. You are no longer drifting, you are directing. No longer hoping, you are building. No longer wishing, you are becoming. And becoming is the most powerful process you will ever experience, because it transforms not just your circumstances, but your identity. And once your identity changes, everything else follows. Your habits align, your decisions sharpen, your environment evolves, because you begin to outgrow what no longer matches your standard. Old patterns, old conversations, old limitations, they begin to feel foreign, uncomfortable, and you release them not with resistance, but with understanding. Because you know they were part of your journey, but they are not part of your future. And this release creates space for new habits, new ideas, new opportunities, space for growth. And growth is where your greatness continues to unfold. Layer by layer, challenge by challenge, victory by victory, until one day you realize something profound. The person you once dreamed of becoming is now who you are. But even then, you do not stop, because you understand now that greatness is not a destination you arrive at. It is a level you live at, a commitment you renew daily, a standard you uphold in every thought, every action, every choice. And this is the final shift, The shift from chasing greatness to embodying it, from seeking validation to creating value, from waiting for opportunity to becoming the opportunity. Because when you reach this level, the world begins to respond differently. Not because it has changed, but because you have. Your energy is different. Your presence is different. Your expectations are different. And people feel it. Opportunities align with it. Results reflect it. But it all traces back to one decision. One moment, one refusal. The moment you looked at average and said no more, and meant it.